Then, finally, I'd like to share with you the words of the Shem Shmuel. Very often, the Hasidic masters had a new approach and an appreciation of the psukim. The Shem Shmuel can be found in two places. One in Behaalotecha, one in the beginning of his commentary on Behaalotecha. And he's, of course, lived at the beginning of the last century. He's a Sachar Chavar Rebbe, son of the great Iglei Tal and Avnei Nezer. He was in the Gerer family of Rebbes. And there he says as follows. He says, usually in this world there's good and there's evil. In every aspect of life, there's something good and something bad. And you, Moshe Rabbeinu, perhaps you think that to be with your wife in the family way, perhaps this would have both good and evil. But you're above this. You don't need to stay away from your wife. You can find holiness even within the marital confines. So therefore, you need to get back together with your wife. Maybe Moshe, you're so modest, Moshe, that you don't realize that with you, there will be only holiness in your marital life. Nothing else. That was their admonishment, a beautiful rebuke to their modest brother, whom they appreciated as a modest brother, according to this reading of the Shem Shmuel. And they said to him, you don't need that. Even in regular, normal family life, you could still be the great Moshe Rabbeinu, the great prophet. God turns to them and says, I'm sorry, you're wrong. He's a special type of prophet. For this prophecy, his idea of being away from his wife might be, in this particular unique case, that would be proper. Moshe Rabbeinu, no one else, he was able to do this. He had to do that. Elsewhere in Parshat Shlach, he writes a fascinating theory. He says, what is a leader? A leader needs to be connected to the people, have a chibur, a connection with his people. So Miriam and Aaron look at this parsha, they look what's going on, and they said, look, you have mitonanim, you have people who are complaining, you have afsafsuf, you have the mixed multitude, you have mitavim, people desiring meat. After standing on Mount Sinai, now all they can think about is the flesh. What's going on here? Look at the wonderful leader they have, Moshe Rabbeinu, our brother. You know what the problem is? The problem is Moshe is disconnected. He's not connected with the people. He's out of touch. Moshe Rabbeinu, it's a very lofty goal that you want to be above everyone else. That's good for you. But the people, they need you to come closer. They need you to have more chibur, more connection with their leader. And perhaps with that, they will re-achieve and re-attain that holiness which they had once had. And therefore, they not only questioned him, but they admonished him and said, please, Moshe Rabbeinu, get back in touch with the people, become a family man, people will relate to you more, we'll stop having all these problems. And again, the truth is that they were questioning Adon HaNevi'im, the father of all prophets. It was wonderful that they tried to be prophets, that Miriam tried to use her role as prophecy. But you know what? In this particular case, it was a mistake. Moshe knew what he was doing. God agreed to him and to what he had decided. And in fact, this questioning of Moshe's authority led to next week's parsha and the one after it, the questioning of Moshe's authority, both in Shlach, the spies, and with Korach, the rebellion against Moshe. That's what Shem Shmuel says. Shem Shmuel says, also he agrees that the Miriam and Aharon were trying to admonish Moshe and to give him good advice. And this may explain why Miriam ultimately is stricken with leprosy. Why leprosy? Why not something else? And if you look in the Torah, in the Tanakh, you find that in the story of Elisha, the great prophet, there were two who doubted his prophecy. One was a fellow named Naaman, a non-Jewish general. And he said, what? I should listen to the prophet to dunk myself into the Jordan River? What do I need his river for? I have better rivers. Oh, You doubt the prophet? That's the kind of person you are? Now we understand, Naaman, why you've been a leper your whole life. You've doubted the notion of the Jewish people, the notion of a prophet, the uniqueness of a prophecy. And then Gehazi, the one who could have been the next Elisha, the next Elijah, the prophet, was Elijah, Elisha, and the next was to be Gehazi, the apprentice of Elisha. He takes money. He takes money for the healing of the leper, of that leprous general. And the prophet had said he wanted to do it for free. He desecrated God's name and he ruined everything. And God said the leprosy of Naaman should fall on you. And Gehazi became a leper because he ruined his chance to be a prophet. He ruined his role as prophet. Miriam was doing a great job. You know what her great job was? Shtika. She didn't say a word. Moshe was doing such a good job, she didn't need to say a word. Sometimes a parent doesn't need to say a word. Sometimes a teacher doesn't need to say a word. But then she opened her mouth and tried to give admonishment. She tried to play her role as prophet. She made a mistake. And with that, questioning the prophet, you get leprosy. Our conclusion is that how could Miriam have spoken gossip against her brother? Miriam, the great prophetess, about whom the Zohar says that there are 3 people who are chakukin b'rakia, 3 people who are engraved in the sky, Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. They are part of the heavens themselves, the throne of God, the seat of the divine. How could she slander against her brother? The answer is, she was trying to do her God-given role as prophet, but she had a very difficult job. She was the prophet who could never prophesy. The prophet who never had anything to say because Moshe was so amazing and so near perfection. And she tries this one time to say something to Moshe, to admonish him, to help him. And it turns out it was a grave error. And that was the sin. She was admonished, she received leprosy, and she continued to be the silent prophetess, the prophet who needs not utter a word. That's the story of Miriam. And we too need to watch our lips. Sometimes we don't need to say anything. Watch our lips for gossip. And with that, we can emulate the great role of the prophetess Miriam, who spent her whole life, as soon as Moshe took over, not saying a word to the prophet, to the great leader of the Jewish people, because he didn't need any admonishment. And that is the greatest thing that she could do for the Jewish people. I'd like to thank Jason Lefkowitz for making today's presentation possible from the JSL studios here in Memphis. And I'd like to ask if anyone would like to correspond about any of our theories or discussions here on our webcast. Please feel free to email me at rabbijmf@gmail.com. rabbijmf@gmail.com. Thank you.